Greetings, mortals. I am Q. And again, I am here with a review and my reaction to the latest Star Trek Discovery. Now, allow me first to mute this dread machine. Primitive, it should have known that I needed to do that, but it was made by humans. Now, this episode had two storylines. One, a little vacation from Michael Burnham, and her own version of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And the B-roll, or the B storyline, was our dear friend, Captain Pike, going off with Ash Taylor to launch a probe that came home a little pissed. So let's talk about the first part, the Burnham trip. Now, it seems interesting that she would go to her parents and find Spock on Vulcan. It kind of makes sense when you're a bounty hunter, when you're trying to find a fugitive. Generally, they go to some place where they know. They absolutely know that they go home, they go to an old friend's house. In this case, Spock went home to Mommy and ended up in this Katra-blocking rock formation. That's the first I've heard of that. And was drawing pictures on the wall. It's kind of disappointing that we waited 7 episodes to actually see Spock, and he's babbling and practically catatonic. Catatonic? What is this English word? Catatonic. I lose track, so many languages. Arium is the Red Angel. We'll talk about the Red Angel shortly, or as I like to call them, Iron Man 3000. So Burnham goes home, finds out that her mother is lying. I mean, the whole scene with Sarek finding them. Did Sarek seem pissed to you? Is that very Vulcan of him? I have to say that whole storyline was kind of disappointing. Plus, Burnham takes Spock to Section 31. I mean, seriously now. Hola, editorial gamer. This one is going to be in English, though. So, Section 31 would be the last place I'd take someone I cared about, if I actually cared about anyone, except, of course, I have to care about Lady Q and Little Q. It's written in the contract somewhere. But, again, Sarek didn't seem very Vulcan. Burnham takes Spock to Section 31, where they have a memory extractor. I mean, they've stolen everything else from all the different other storylines. Why didn't they just call it a Klingon mind sifter? That would have made a lot more sense. Yes, and her little escape seemed way too easy. I half expected when they were on the asteroid for a giant worm to try to eat their ship. And they're going to Talos 4. I can only assume, if they're not going to totally spread excrement on continuity, that Spock is not going to remember the whole Talos 4 thing, which, looking at the previews, it looks like they've fixed their heads a little bit. But Talos 4 is definitely connected to Captain Pike and that original away team mission. In the original pilot, if Spock had known of Talos 4, then he should have said something at that time. So I can only assume that they're going to erase his memory of Talos 4 for some reason. But at this point, apparently the Federation doesn't know enough to put it under permanent quarantine and make it basically a isolated planet. I wonder if there's any Orion slave girls who aren't really Orion slave girls there. So anyway, that part was a little disappointing. The mission to try to send a probe into this time rift, this temporal anomaly, where things were all mixed up and timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, or is it wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey? Who knows? Things get very mixed up. Does it come after the cage? If that is the case, that is very interesting. So he does know Talos 4, but it should be a off-limits planet at this point. So why wouldn't they mention that? But Pike was being a little reckless. I do like his style. When Ash, Tyler, was it Tyler, Taylor, Voch, when Voch, as a human, confronted him about Burnham's personal time, I love the fact that he was like, 'cause it's personal time. Pike continues to be one of the better characters on the show. He was a little reckless, perhaps, in volunteering for that mission, but he did have the most qualifications, so it did kind of make sense. And him having not participated in the whole Klingon Federation war, you know, yes, apparently he wants to prove that he's not a coward. Still, their mission seemed very interesting. I usually enjoy time stuff, and it was cool to have the flashes in the future and flashes in the past. That was some pretty interesting temporal anomalies. I wish they had done more with that, or maybe, I don't know, Pike and Ash ended up in a different time entirely. They didn't have to resolve it all in this particular episode. Not off limits until Kirk commands the Enterprise. We'll discuss that in a moment. Because I'm not sure why Kirk would have anything to do with Talos 4 until, of course, Spock's little mutiny years later. So, that was a fun adventure. Stamets going and beaming to the shuttle and rescuing them. He definitely has some superior DNA to allow him to do that. So that was a kind of fun little adventure, a rescue mission. Love Saru. Tilly, I found her spunky this episode. And as usual, a little insecure. But yeah, so overall, I liked half this episode. The other half, still the whole Spock thing, they've been building it up, and now we meet him, and he's a gibbering idiot. And again, I don't like the way they show Vulcans. So what do you guys think here? Let's see. Hello, Amethyst Willow. Sexual tension between Pike and Tyler. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as sexual. There's tension, definitely. But I think it's mainly because Pike has a little bit of racism when it comes to Klingons, which I can't really blame him for. I've never met a Klingon that I didn't want to send into a star. I'd do that if the Q Continuum didn't frown on such things. I actually did it to Worf once, but they made me turn back time and undo it. Aggravating. Yes, the serialization of the show is drawing everything out, taking so long. That's from M. Are you from Britain? Interesting. But yes, this is a problem I have seen also with the dear departed Netflix Marvel series, is that they have a story to tell. They could tell it in a much shorter amount of episodes, but they decide to draw it out. And what's the thing where that Section 31 head is responsible for Burnham's parents' death, and that's something they have to keep from her at all costs? She's not that important. I mean, unless he was going after her parents to kill them because they were a security threat, if it was he that was responsible for something that inadvertently caused their deaths, I don't see how Giorgio is able to hold that over him. I don't know. I'd be interested to find out what they think they're doing there. Liquid is good. But yes, with this particular series, they are drawing it out. I imagine that next week's episodes will be the mid-season finale, so we'll have some kind of cliffhanger. And the Telosians, yes, their heads look a bit different. I think they went for an updated look. Yeah, I only saw a glimpse of them. Can't say I think too much of them. I'm willing to give them a chance, but yeah, why they didn't just go with the classic look, I'm not sure. So they're saying this takes place after the cage. Again, I would think, explain to me why Talos 4 was not off limits until Kirk took command of the Enterprise. Because certainly Pike made some type of report about what happened there, and they basically set it up as a restricted no-fly zone. I would imagine why it would happen after Kirk took over the Enterprise, I'm not quite sure. No mid-season finale, no break this season. Are they doing all 16 episodes in a row? That's interesting. I was gonna get some joy in not having to go through this every Thursday night. Pike and Tyler are going to get it on. I don't know about that. Perhaps for Lise? I'm not sure what you mean, Amethyst. And yes, Worf deserved it. He ate a really good book. Leland is the secret villain of the season. I lose track. Is that the robot chick that Brainiac took over? Because that looks like Brainiac. So are they doing some kind of crossover with Krypton? It definitely looks, the 3 dots just screams out Brainiac. And M, I totally agree with you that why does everyone know about Section 31? It's supposed to be the most secret organization. I'm repeating myself from previous streams, but when it was introduced in Deep Space Nine, no one knew about it. Talos 4 was off limits in 2254. What year is it? This whole Stardate thing confuses me. What year is this show supposedly happening in? Because it was off limits in 2254, but was it off limits before then? It was off limits at the time of Kirk in command. Doesn't mean it happened right after the cage. However, it wouldn't make sense for it to happen too much if it's 3 years after the cage happened. Why would they wait more than that to make it off limits? I mean, Pike delivered his report, I imagine. So why would they decide many years later to make it off limits unless some other people went to the planet? Which I suppose is what they're trying to do with the next episode. Because they're helping Spock. Why are they helping Spock? They were just looking for a pet to help with their other pet. You know, it's kind of like when you have a cat and you want to get another cat so the cat isn't lonely. That's all they were doing. Why they would even talk to Spock is beyond me. But it could be 14 all 14 in a row. Okay. I was looking forward to a break. M says it could have happened because of something that takes place after the cage. Because having a race of beings that have proven that they could manipulate the perceptions of lower life forms, which I know isn't that hard, isn't enough for you Federation types to be scared away. Arium is the robot chick. Leland is the S-31 captain. I can't keep track of mortal names. So yes, I don't think he's that secret of a villain. If he is a villain, I think he could just be an asshole. I think Arium, the robot chick, yeah, she's been possessed by Brainiac, and we will have to see what happens there. So it turns out probably the secret villain is Brainiac, who sent back, who is it, Kang the Conqueror from the future in this Red Angel guise. I'm getting my universes confused. Botrek says it's implied that the events of the cage are the reason Talos 4 is off limits. But Discovery could not go along with that. Oh, you mean they might not go with canon? What a shock! I do find it interesting that they are bringing back Talos 4 and revisiting that particular planet. But yes, it doesn't make sense to me, and I like to use logic. I know you humans don't really like to use it, and the Vulcans in the Discovery universe apparently don't use it all that well themselves. Yeah, it would seem to me logical that burn me once, was it fool me once, shame on you, and quarantine the planet. Fool me twice, I think they're asking for it. So Discovery takes place in 2256 to 2257. So far. And, yeah. Some of the decisions they make are beyond me. Like having Section 31B. Everybody knows! Discovery is eager to make its stamp on Star Trek canon. Yes, it's trying, but I still maintain they should have said it 10 years after Voyager. I'm not one of those people who complains about the use of better-looking technology on the ship, because obviously, when the original Star Trek series came out, they did what they could with what they had, and now they have a bigger budget and lens flares. But just messing with history and trying to change things around, it's like they're so eager to incorporate so many elements from so many different shows to mash it all together as if they're trying to shout, "We are Star Trek!" It's like Jean-Luc, "We are Star Trek! We will go where no one has gone before." Anyways, STD is Vogon poetry. I would not insult Vogon poetry that much. And as someone who knows both the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and the question, the answer is 42. I'm not telling you the question. You'll have to figure that out yourself. But you can probably do so. Amethyst agrees, setting it 10 years after Voyager would have made sense. And they wouldn't have necessarily even had to have a Klingon war. They have other people that they could have fought with, or it could have been a new race, maybe in the Theta Quadrant, or, a new race that rose after the potential defeat of the Borg, which I get confused. That might be in the book universe that they discovered the secret behind the Borg and were able to defeat them. Probably still around. Lens flares, the J.J. Abrams thing does need to go away. I agree, Em. They are making it very cinematic, but it's like they're trying a bit too hard. Maybe they'll calm down. There were some changes between Season 1 and Season 2 that did improve the show, though improving a Klingon by returning their hair. I mean, can Klingons really be improved? But there have been some movements into the right directions. But now I'm not quite so sure. Let's refer back to Talos 4. It'll be some great fan service. Yes, that turbo lift shop, that was interesting. It's like it did seem there was a ton of wasted space. It's like you would think that they would be moving on rails and such, but between rooms, it looked like it was like an open air area. Yes, it was in Star Trek Destiny that where the Borg were defeated. If we don't count how in the William Shatner Star Trek novels, he figured out how to defeat the Borg all by his lonesome, because William Shatner had to have Captain Kirk save the universe practically single-handedly. Those are kind of like definitely an offshoot. Do skinheads stop being skinheads when they grow their hair back? We could only hope. That would be nice. Yes, I believe that this was not my favorite episode of the season. I found the one last week to be much more Star Trek-y. Even if there were some problems with Pike not being as assertive as he should have been and agreeing to, at his first officer's request, basically force an entire species to go through an evolutionary change and putting them in major danger. But I'll give it overall a pass. So that is what I think of this week's episode. It seems kind of fillerish and foolish at the same time. They've finally caught up to Spock, and my God, he is disappointing. He is not the Spock I remember debating with. So, my mortal friends out there, the ones who are intelligent enough to decide to tune in, what other thoughts did you have that I can expound upon? And no spoilers for tonight's Orville, because as part of my punishment, I can't watch the Orville within a certain amount of time of discovery, because Orville definitely cleans the palate. Last week's Orville was awesome. Dangerous, surprising, but Yes. What else can we talk about? Orville is so much more Star Trek. Did I say that out loud? I have heard some things about some of the other Star Trek series they're working on. The Below Decks, I believe it's called. The animated film that is, or the animated series that is supposed to be hilarious. Not that you humans don't just make me laugh just by your mere arrogance of existing. The Picard show, they just say that Jonathan Frakes will be involved in it, and they haven't really given any more details. But again, I'm looking forward to seeing Jean-Luc again. Lower Decks, Below Decks, wherever you humans like to crawl. I do not know when the Orville comes on Hulu, because these streaming services are beyond comprehension, some of them, especially CBS All Access. Which was one of the greatest episodes of TNG. Which episode did I speak of? Because anyone that had me in it was obviously a great episode. I must have mentioned something. I spout so much brilliance that I can't even keep track of it. Tapestry. Tapestry was a great episode of TNG. When Picard had hair. Well, at least in the mirror. But yes, Lower Decks, Jonathan Frakes says that is hilarious. Now, the whole Section 31 series, as they rip out the heart of canon even further with that, it might be interesting, but again, I am not conceding that this is actually the Prime Universe. This is an alternate reality, and should remain so. Oh, Lower Decks was one of the greatest episodes of TNG. I actually don't recall that. It's been a while since I've revisited that particular starship. I'll look it up. But Orville, again, I'm interested in seeing, and again, don't spoil it for me, how they get out of this one, or if they get out of this one, and whether or not Isaac feels the power of love, because it's a curious thing. It makes a one man weep and another man sing. Could it change Isaac's heart into a little white dove? Lower Decks was an episode of TNG, and they turned the premise into a show. I seem to vaguely recall it didn't feature any of the major characters, which was fun. Discovery so far, every episode has to have Burnham front and center. We had episodes where Picard was shuffled off to the side in TNG. We had episodes that focused on Barclay, for God's sakes. I really wish they would just, send her on vacation, a real vacation. And there would be much less overacting on the ship. So that is what I have to say. Apparently this evening, my dear friend, who's also dead, the governor, wants to do some stuff, so he wants me to wrap it up early. So if you mortals, any episode without Wesley, shut up, Wesley. Wesley was a pain, to be honest, yes. Though he does well now on The Big Bang Theory. But mortals, I appreciate the fact that you have enjoyed my wisdom. As far as this channel is concerned, if you are not already subscribed, please do. If you would like to support this channel, there's a link to coffee, which apparently is something that humans appreciate a great deal. It is in the description. And if you like merch, including that of my dear departed friend, the Governor, there is a link to merch in the description as well. And this channel has plenty of other videos. The good ones, of course, include me, but there's some decent ones with the Governor and all kinds of other people. So, it pains me that there won't be a mid-season finale. So it just seems like they're going to drag it on for 14 episodes in a row, basically tearing out my last shreds of sanity that I have left. But thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week when I pass judgment on Star Trek Discovery once again. This week my judgment is meh. And remember, the trial is never over.